Hey guys, now we're on to season 6. Okay, so first off, I just wanted to make this note. I thought it was very interesting how I get the feeling that the first 6 episodes of this season were kind of filmed in their own separate block. Kind of like season 3, they had both halves. I think these were filmed earlier than the rest of them. So this would be Salty Secret through The Fogman. Basically, all the episodes on that Salty Secret VHS. I say that because, well, for one thing, the color level in, some versions, it just seems so much. I mean, yes, still not good, but it seems a lot more vibrant than later episodes. And also Alec Baldwin's narration, it's not better per se, but it seems calm as opposed to just bored like in later episodes. So, and especially since the fact that I think the VHS was released before the season even started airing in the UK. I think these maybe were made earlier. Also, just the fact when they released those season 5 blooper reels, clips from these episodes were also included. So yeah, I'm sure they maybe for US video release they did these early, but yeah, I just thought I'd point that out. But anyway, let's get started with the actual season. Salty's Secret, the first episode after Magic Railroad. And I'm going to put this one in B. This episode's it's good. As a kid, it kind of confused me a bit because I never really understood what the whole idea of Salty's secret was. Like, did they ever say what the secret was, or is that the idea? You don't know what his secret is. I assume they're talking about secret being how he handles the trucks. That just kind of confused me as a kid. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, this episode's fine. It's jolly. I'll just put it that way. Salty's just such a likable character. I think that's yeah. I mean, I love the fact that Bill and Ben think he's gonna completely fail, but not only is he good with the trucks, he becomes friends with them, and Bill and Ben are just completely dumbfounded, and they fail themselves trying to attempt it. So yeah. This is just a fun little episode. The ending where he gets to finally go to the sea. Again, Salty's just such a jolly character. Next up, we have Harvey to the rescue, and this one seems a bit controversial because a lot of people think like, oh, Edward's out of character for questioning Harvey. Honestly, though, that's such a minor bit. I don't really care. It's not like Edward strikes out. I'm gonna put this one in B too. I really like them, even though it's been done to death. I think this is a nice way of doing that. Being different is good message. I mean, I've always loved Harvey's design. Just look how intricate this model is. Just all the tech, gears, and all that. Very good model work. That's really all I can say. All right, next up we have No Sleep for Cranky. This is one I didn't like as a kid because I don't know, I just found it kind of boring, but as an adult, I can appreciate it much more. I still don't like it as much as a lot of people do, I feel, but yeah, it's still got some funny moments. I'm gonna put this in B. I mean, a lot of it's just the character interaction between these four: Cranky, Salty, Bill, and Ben. The dialogue is just priceless. Luckily, no one was hurt, except my ears. It's an episode that does a good job of like making Cranky such, he as I said before, he's such a dick, but this episode makes him so relatable. This is an episode where I really wish Baldwin kept his season 5 voice because it would have made it so much more funny. I didn't really remember this one much growing up. Don't get me wrong, I still knew the plot, and they reused shots from Cranky Bugs, the ship. But I mean, this episode I think it's good. It's got some funny moments. Also just Bill and Ben being like, "You're gonna get into trouble." Yeah. And next up we have A Bad Day for Harold the Helicopter. Or is it a bad day for Harold? Is it one of those stupid US titles where they just added like one or two words? This one I'm going to put this one in C. It's all right, I guess. I just feel like I really don't have many opinions on this episode. It exists. I think the issue is just that I feel like the story they're going for, Percy and Harold having a crash and all that. I feel like they could have done it a lot better. I guess Well, for one thing, Harold taking the mail, that just doesn't really make any sense. I mean, for one thing, would all the mail bags, how did they all fit in this one helicopter bag? And it just seems like a very inconvenient way for them to take it. Like, why not just take it by road, get some buses out, or vans out? Yeah, the crash, I feel like, is, well, how do I put this? The crash, it's not that it's underwhelming, it's just, in real life, obviously, this crash would have been way more violent. I mean, he probably would have caught fire or exploded. I mean, even if he landed in the haystack, I mean, yeah, his rotors, they would have, like, flung the hay everywhere. Have you seen, like, videos of helicopters turning on their sides? Yeah, I feel like this is, when I made that episode about Duck and Harold, where he crashed into the cliff, that was a better way of doing this sort of story. Yeah, this episode's fine. There's just not much to it. I feel like it's just wasted potential. I guess I'll put it that way. I mean, not too much, but yeah. I mean, I hate to say this, seeing a helicopter crash, that should be pretty intense. I honestly don't have many thoughts on this one. I guess I'll say I do like Harold's theme at the beginning, and also I do remember that. You see right here, this coach, you can see the studio set and the reflection. But yeah, that's really all I can say about this one. Next up, we have Elizabeth the Vintage Lorry, or Elizabeth the Vintage Steam Truck. Is that with the U.S. title? Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't call Horrid Lorry a Horrid Truck, or, oh, they could have called it Troublesome Trucks. That would have, I don't know, but, I'm gonna put this one in B. Yeah, it's pretty good. Elizabeth is a kind of like George. Well, I guess Elizabeth's not like malicious like George, but she's like just a grumpy old bitch. The best way I could put it. I really love Elizabeth's theme. Sorry, I really love Elizabeth's theme, and yeah, I just the scenes of her driving I always found really fascinating. It's one of those like I'll put it this way: it's like Saved from Scrap if Trevor was like an old grouch. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I don't really have many thoughts on this one. I really like Elizabeth's model, especially after she's repaired. So again, I'm not a engineering expert. A steam truck. Does that mean the whole truck is powered by steam? Like you have to light the boiler and all that? And do you drive it with like an accelerator and brakes, or is it like Trevor where you have to just push the throttle forward? I don't know. Those just always seemed like very complicated things to drive. And I've seen many models of them in like train shops and train fairs I've been to. But yeah, this is Elizabeth's a fun character. And now we have the Fog Man. This one I'm going to put in... I'm going to put this one in A. Simply for the fact that, this episode has a lot of really great atmosphere. It's the first of many Season 6 winter episodes. And... yeah, just the atmosphere it gets. I've just always had a fascination with fog, like especially the intro to this episode. It's just beautiful, but mysterious. Yeah, it's a good story about old versus new technology. The foghorn, it always has some funny moments. Sounds like a tugboat. Yeah, in fact, it sounds like Derek's horn, or Salty's horn too, I guess. Yeah, I just really like the scenery in this episode. But the crash is also really impressive with Thomas. Just all these falling rocks. Yeah, it's the first, as I said, the first of one of these like eerie winter episodes of this season. Obviously not on the same level as some other ones, but yeah, it's both beautiful but eerie at the same time. I'll put it that way. Alright, next up we've got the 2 pack episodes, Jack Jumps In and A Friend in Need. And yeah, I'm going to combine these as 2. They're both going in the A category. I feel like they're a great introduction to all these characters. So these were the only times I saw these 2 characters as a child, because by the time the miniseries went on DVD, I had outgrown Thomas initially. So Yeah, and also, I had no idea that they were part of season 6, because they were put on that New Friends for Thomas DVD, and that's known for being the only DVD narrated by Michael Angelis in the UK. So yeah, I can see why they included it here, because it's a lot of new characters, it'd be appropriate, but they also had Michael Angelis narrate these two episodes for American audiences, and yeah, I can kind of see why, maybe just to have the same consistency, but they could have used Baldwin's narrations. I mean, they've done it before. It wouldn't be that much of a switch. But anyway, because of that, I had no idea that they were season 6 until I was looking on the wiki when I got older. Yeah, and Alec Baldwin's narration of Jack Jumps In, especially, it had aired on TV, but it had never been shown anywhere else. So you had, like, the only way you could access it was some, like, crappy recording of, I believe it was in Canada, like when it aired on TV. So yeah, it was one of those like pieces of lost media. It seemed. A Friend in Need, for some reason, was put on this DVD called Mud Glorious Mud, and that's a very strange DVD. That's a whole different topic, but yeah, so it wasn't until like the whole season was released on digital downloads that we got like the full clear version of Jack Jumps In by Alec Baldwin. So yeah, these two episodes are like part of that very strange season 7 awkward relationship us Americans had. But anyway, so one thing I really appreciate is the fact that even before I knew all these other episodes existed, I still found the characters very memorable. Like, I could name all of them if you'd showed me them before all those other episodes came out. Like Jack, Alfie, Max, Ned, Oliver, etc. Yeah, they're just all so distinct. I remember them quite clearly. I always forgot Isabella's name. I just referred to her as Yellow Elizabeth. But yeah, I remember reading that apparently when they were making this series, they went to like a real construction site and they based the characters off of like the different types of workers. So the truck drivers apparently were the rudest people, and so that's why Max and Monty are, the troublemakers. That's just really clever. Oh yeah, I guess Monty wasn't in this episode. Neither was, who else? Nelson, Buster, and Patrick. Yeah, that would be like if Donald and Douglas, Donald appeared season 2 and Douglas appeared like in season 5. Yeah. The model work is just so great with these characters. I really like the message that this 2-part arc has. It's basically the first episode. The message is like, don't go into areas that are too dangerous for you or do too much. I think the message is also just like, do the best at what you can do. Like, don't feel you have to do too much. If you know what I mean. Like, Jack is able to save Thomas just by using his loader, saving the bridge. That's something he can do. Whereas, in the first episode, he screws up by doing some jobs that were just way too difficult for him. And Jack is such a great lead character because, the way he is, the audience can really relate to him. Kind of like Thomas when he first appeared. They can put themselves in his shoes or wheels or whatever the vehicle equivalent is. But yeah, as I just said, the set work is quite impressive. There's only like 3 sets in these episodes, yet you don't notice it. It's just such great. It's a great episode of like just focusing on road characters. I thought they did a fantastic job. Kind of like with Edward, Trevor, and the Really Useful Party. Obviously, the big-scaled Thomas is really distracting, really creepy, but, that's something I can overlook. And, so, that's all I can really say about these 2 episodes. I think I prefer the pack episodes, but, these 2 episodes are a great introduction. Alright, next we have It's Only Snow, or Thomas's Snowy Surprise. Is that the real U.S. title? It was always confusing because that's what they called the VHS it was on, where it was the main episode. But yeah, this one's... I'm not sure. I'm debating B and C. I'm gonna put this in B. It's not the best, but, it is quite the crash with the water tower is pretty great. Yeah, I'm putting it in B because it really shows like Thomas being able to, very determined to get the tree to the village despite, basically not having protection. Yeah, he forces through the snow. So yeah, this is just like kind of a I'll put it this way, it's an average season 6 episode. I don't remember much about it, but it's, yeah, I mean, the snow visuals are quite nice. We'll get to some great snow episodes later on, but yeah, this episode's fine. Although I never understood, why is Thomas's snowplow rusty and all that? What happened to his blue one? But again, that's just a little nitpick. But yeah, this one's alright. Alright, next we come to Twin Trouble. One Good Turn 2.0. I'm gonna put this one in C. It's an extremely average episode. As I said before in that other video, it's a lot better than One Good Turn, but still, it's just, again, average. That's basically the word I can describe it with. I feel like what really tainted my view of this episode is just the fact that in the US version, Baldwin doesn't give him a Scottish accent. And again, I'm not giving like Baldwin flack for that. Maybe he just couldn't do one. But I just feel like Donald and Douglas are among my favorite characters, and one of the things that made them so funny was the accent. So yeah, you just give them like the most generic Baldwin voice. It's just not the same. And again, maybe Baldwin just couldn't do one, but I feel like it would have worked if he had, the salty voice. I think that's supposed to be Irish, but that would have worked perfectly as like a, compromise. Or, Duncan's season 6 voice is not great either, but that would at least, make it slightly more entertaining. But, I mean, voices aside, this episode is, it's just a very average twin argument episode. As I said before, unlike One Good Turn, you can definitely, or at least I can definitely understand the argument, the justifications a lot more. This accident they get into at the beginning, it's quite brutal. I feel like someone could have easily died. Yeah, I mean, he's basically on his side. It's almost like the Flying Kipper. And also, them reconciling, that's, again, more understandable than in One Good Turn. This is quite a nasty accident, too. Although I do remember seeing, I think in a YouTube poop, someone made a joke where they played this, and then the crash from Buffer Bother, and then they showed the meme of Pam from The Office saying, like, it's the same picture. Yeah, it kind of is, but this episode's, it's alright. One thing I'll say, I absolutely love Donald and Douglas's season 6 theme. Also, thought just came to me. Is this like Trevor's last speaking role until like season, 20? Yeah, because I don't think he spoke in season 7 or season 8. Or yeah, that I just noticed that. But yeah, this episode's not bad. It's just it feels like a production line episode. I'll put it that way. I mean, season 6 kind of was like that. This episode's fine. It's definitely not my favorite though. So it's going in C. Alright, next up we have the World's Strongest Engine. Honestly, I think a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but I'm gonna put this in S. I love this episode. I mean, it's kind of like, the same as Diesel Does It Again, but what makes this episode a lot better for me is just the crash at the end. It is just so hilarious and brutal at the same time. Like, the fact that he just goes right off the pier. Yeah, and I mean, Alec Baldwin just yelling, "Help!" just still cracks me up. And honestly, I'm sure this wasn't the intention, but that ship horn afterwards, I find it so funny because you could argue that could be like the equivalent of a swear beep. Again, I'm sure that wasn't the intention, but that just was so funny. I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. I guess objectively, this episode would probably be on like an A or B level, but I'm sorry. This was one of my favorite episodes in that James and the Red Balloon video. So, I love Diesel's season 6 theme, and yeah, it was really hard to get like a clean version of it instrumental on YouTube. I also want to know what the fuck happened to Henry. Like, I want to see an episode of that. Like, yeah, and also going back onto like Henry's theme appearing now and again. At the end when they play that triumphant theme, I wonder these notes here.
He backed up to.
Is that supposed to be referencing Henry's theme? Again, I didn't notice that until I was an adult. If that's the case, I feel like that would make it so that Henry's theme appeared in every classic season except two, I think. That didn't really occur to me. Henry was vastly underused in this season, kind of like with Edward in season 5 and Duck with season 7. Yeah, this was his equivalent. But yeah, I mean, I feel like this is just another great way to bring Diesel back. Yeah, the story's a bit similar to his previous episodes, but it's just a lot more brutal, the accident. And just, I really like, the ending line where they say the trucks can help get rid of a smelly diesel. That, I feel like, is that the first time we see the trucks on the engine side? That's a great thing. It's just, yeah, it's kind of like bowled out, too. There's just not much really I can say about this one, except I just always loved this one as a child. Just it's a very short but insane crash. Like how fast he goes, just like the smoke. It's just comically brutal. That's how I can describe it. All right, next we have Scaredy Engines. I'm gonna put this one in B. It's not. If you compare this to other previous scary episodes, yeah, I mean, it can't hold a candle to like Haunted Henry or whatever. But still, I feel like the visuals in this episode are still pretty spooky. I mean, I love that they reused the Duncan Gets Spooked theme, as well as that Haunted Henry first theme. Yeah, I didn't realize that until I was an adult. But the story it's just really basic, but I feel like they did a pretty good job with it. It's a typical, like, person makes fun of someone for being scared, and then that person gets scared, and they make up at the end. Yeah, it's very basic, but I feel like the visuals make up for it a lot. And, it's got some funny moments. Thomas just racing by. Yeah, I mean, Big Shock Baldwin wasn't as good in season 6, but the way he does these line deliveries when Thomas runs away, wow, let's credit to him. I mean, yeah, the smelter scenes are just really eerie, especially, with the atmosphere in the smelter's yard is really great. Yeah, this episode's it's good. I like watching this one. Not the best, but it shows that the crew still had the ability to make some really creepy visuals. And then we go on to another creepy episode, Percy and the Haunted Mine. I'm also gonna put this one in. Let's see. Yeah, this is also going in B. I think my opinion of this episode is kind of the same as Scaredy Engines. The story is pretty basic, but the atmosphere and visuals make up for it. Yeah, the mindsets are really spooky, and my question was always, how on earth did Percy's crew just not notice these buildings falling? I mean, just how loud they were. Like, what were you doing? Are you like deaf? And I really like the twist about the gnomes. I thought that was so funny. Like, naughty gnomes turns out to be garden gnomes. I mean, to be fair though, garden gnomes they can be quite scary. It's kind of like, with fear of clowns. I thought that was very clever. Yeah, I guess this episode is kind of like the spooky version of Bah. A station has a contest and something happens. Just think of anything else. Is this bridge right here supposed to be the same one from Haunted Henry? Yeah, the building's falling into the ground. That's just a very creepy visual. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is this where Stepney was in that shed from that song, Boo Choo Choo? But yeah, I like this episode. It's alright. Again, my opinion is pretty much the same as Scaredy Engines. Okay, this next episode, man, I mean, oh man, I can't tell you how perfect this is. It's made me cry so much. How perfect it is. Okay, no, this episode's not perfect. But yeah, I guess it does almost make me cry at just how shit it is. Okay, not really. I'm not going to get that upset about a Thomas episode. But yeah, Middle Engine, what do you expect? It's going in the F tier. It's one of those few episodes that just makes me really angry. I mean, other bad episodes are either like, yeah, it's crap, but oh, whatever. And other ones, I can still watch. But this one, I just don't like watching it. It's just a mean-spirited episode. And yeah, it's great seeing Ari and Bert again. I'll get to them in a minute. But yeah, it feels like this episode is incomplete. there's no resolution. Percy becomes a middle engine, and then he had this whole subplot with the coaling machine. What is the point of it? Just for them to have like a gimmick of him going up this machine, and the fact that it was clearly an accident. Henry bumped into him, and yet the Fat Controller is just such a dick. Like again, it wasn't Percy's fault, and this is the worst example of it. Like, oh, I guess now I think about it, I think that was so they could have James take over Percy's work. But still, yeah, I mean, there's episodes where the Fat Controller is, unjustifiably mad at the engines, but, he apologizes later on, like Cranky Bugs or Percy, Percy Gets It Right. But here, nothing. Like, it just, yeah, I just don't like these types of episodes. It just, again, I'm sorry I keep saying this, mean-spirited, just left a foul taste in my mouth at the end. Just, ugh. And, again, there's just no resolution to this episode. Nothing happens to Ari and Bert. I suppose the joke is supposed to be James thinks he's all arrogant, but his arrogance leads him to be a middle engine. This episode could have been fine if they had just rewritten it, like a better plan, at some point, like maybe Ari and Bert become a middle engine by their own foolery at the end. James and Percy trick them, or, they get stuck on the coaling chute, and yeah, but what is the point? Seriously, like, is it like supposed to be a let's hate on James episode? Like, again, I've already talked about this so many times in previous videos. It's just, oh, I hate this one. It's just awful. Yeah, it's just total shit. And, Ari and Bert, again, I love seeing them again. I don't mind that, they're not as scary as they were in Season 5. I feel like that's kind of a given, this new era we're in. Still, though, I mean, they could have made them at least a little more intimidating. I mean, they kind of got back to that spooky vibe, in Fergus Breaks the Rules in Season 7. But, yeah, it's just not the same. It's almost like you have to think of them as two different characters. Again, I love seeing them again, but they're just not the same. I've also talked about in other videos, just the production of this episode is really tacky. I mean, several shots where they just reuse shots from later on, like these shots of Ari and Bert. These are the same ones from later on when James comes. I mean, you can see James right here. And also the infamous way they just reused the line coal cars. In Season 6, they started going back to Troublesome Trucks, probably because Shining Time Station didn't exist anymore, but maybe for whatever reason, they they recorded it as Troublesome Trucks in this episode originally, but for some reason they decided to go back to Cars. But they could have done it better than just relaying the same sounding clip over and over again. Coal cars, coal cars, coal cars. Yeah, it's just so noticeable. This isn't really a bad thing, but I do notice some of the camera shots seem very exclusive to this episode. Like, for some reason, this shot of James here, this close-up, you don't really see shots like this anywhere else. Actually, I guess you do see them, like, in Salty's Secret. Yeah, that's not a bad thing. That just puzzles me. But it's shit. 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 That's why I could describe it. Alright, next we have James and the Red Balloon. I'm gonna put this one in C. It's one of those gimmick episodes, the episode that, you make a video around. I've heard people say James and the James and the Red Balloon VHS has the worst Season 6 episodes. It has some pretty bad ones, but I actually really liked this video as a child because it has some great ones as well. If you didn't know, Percy's Chocolate Crunch was my least favorite video, and I'll talk about that when I get to that episode. But yeah, so this episode's, I'll put it this way, it's like a more watered-down version of Thomas and the Rumors. The balloon is quite nice, such great effects and all that, but yeah, just the fact that Thomas and James, are kind of stupid how they feel like this red balloon is going to take their passengers. Like, how on earth would that be feasible? First off, you can't fit all the passengers in here. Second, it goes like, 5 miles an hour? Yeah, so that aspect, I think, just weighs this episode down. But, yeah, this episode's alright. The crash scene, it's just so funny. The way Alec Baldwin just screams like, "Ah!" Yeah, and James accidentally saves the balloon. Yeah, that's quite a funny scene. But yeah, this is again just another average season 6 episode. Yeah, there's just really not much I can say about this one. It's all right. Yeah, literally, I have like no thoughts on this one. It's, eh. All right, up next we've got Scary Jack Frost. Okay, that's all I'll talk about with Alec Baldwin's narration. I'll just say in my opinion, I think this is his worst. And it's an episode which, a great episode that's let down by the poor narration. But that's all I'll say about that. The episode itself is, I really love this one. I'm gonna put it in A. Yeah, it's, I think, the greatest of those really disturbing, eerie winter episodes of this season. Just, yeah, I mean, in the past, when they had snow in winter, it was usually like winter wonderland, mystical, or Christmas. Where here, yeah, this is really displays just the harshness of winter. I mean, these sets are just, yeah, especially at night, it's really well done. I mean, yeah, especially since I went to college in Chicago. I mean, that Percy getting all frozen, that just, you really feel that. And although I will say, I feel like this workman here is scarier than any sort of Jack Frost or ghost in this episode. I guess my only, and this is just minor, they don't really clarify what they mean when they're talking about Jack Frost. They say, oh, Jack Frost is just Frost. Well, is Jack Frost just supposed to be like a, yeah, I know it's supposed to just be, a term for winter, but I guess what I'm asking is, what do they think Jack Frost is at the beginning? Is it like a ghost? Is it a creature? Yeah, so I feel like they could have made that a little more clear. But again, that's a minor issue. I pretty much said what I love about this episode. Just the lighting, poor Percy, all his nasty ice. Does it ever get this cold in the UK? Just curious. I know Sodor generally exaggerates snow a lot, but this would be a very unpleasant atmosphere. Yeah, that's pretty much all I can say about this episode. I've always liked it. Yeah. This next episode is Gordon Takes a Tumble, the biggest insurance lawsuit on Sodor. I mean, I'm gonna put this one in S. I feel like this crash encompasses the attitude they had towards crashes in season 6. In previous seasons, the crashes were like, more intense, and they kind of built up to them, whereas here it's just like an excuse to have the most brutal, insane, over the top bonkers crash. Like, but at the same time though, it never went too far in my opinion. It's cartoony, but it still has like that balance to it. It's a contrast, and again, I love this crash too. The world's strongest engine. That crash was like very blunt, very quick, whereas this one is very drawn out. Like, just, here's a good analogy. The world's strongest engine is like Diesel running into a brick wall and getting flattened, whereas this one is like Gordon going off the rails and just crashing to like every possible thing. And again, both of them work brilliantly. That's kind of like the attitude they had toward crashes in this season. Yeah, this crash is just so insane. I just gotta laugh. I mean, but as I was saying before, yeah, it's kind of just an excuse to have such a major crash, but it still feels like a genuine story. It's not like it just happened out of nowhere, something like All Engines Go would do. Yeah, it's still a pretty grounded story, and honestly, I mean, obviously not on the level as, like, Down the Mine. Yeah, I feel like it's a good Gordon Gets Humbled story. Obviously in the most brutal way possible. But, yeah, it teaches Gordon you don't have to be dignified all the time. You just have to be really useful. That's the thing I remember most about this episode, is I learned the word dignified. That's one of those special grown-up words that the show taught, like celebrity, deputation, yeah, dingy fry. Yeah, this is another example of why I love the Gordon and Percy interactions. He's just fed up with Percy being just a complete idiot. What else can I really say? It just, oh my god, just poor farmer, whoever owns this. Like, they must have had to have huge compensation. Like, their farm is basically ruined. I mean, yeah, I guess that does beg the question, who's at fault for this? I would say the signalman. I mean, yeah, Gordon was going too fast on the old line, but He shouldn't have been switched on that anyway. Why was why were the points switched to that line? It never established that. I love how the Scarecrow's made of beans, like the arms, and I think the head too. It'd be funny, like, if that was Spud the Scarecrow from Bob the Builder. Although he'd probably be screaming and running away. But yeah, again, this is just such an insane episode. That's all I can really say. Alright, next up we have Percy's Chocolate Crunch. And this is another example of one of those, like, crazy season 6 episodes, just like insane. I'm gonna put this one in B, but a very high B. It would be like a B plus. Unlike Gordon Takes a Tumble, I do think this one's a bit more silly. It doesn't quite embrace it as much as Gordon Takes a Tumble or some other episodes, but yeah, I still like this one. Yeah. Again, just another absolutely ridiculous and brutal crash. Like, yeah, in fact, I'm certain this would have caused deaths. I mean, I'm sure there's employees in the factory. Not just that, but, like, this hot boiling chocolate, if it got on the driver and fireman, it would burn them alive. It's basically like Willy Wonka. Augustus Gloop. And I forget where I saw this. It must have been a YouTube poop, but someone made an edit where, all the kids are going into that first candy room from Willy Wonka, and then Percy crashes into it. Oh, that just had me in stitches. Where was that? If anyone knows, please comment down below. I like this episode fine. I think the intro is way too long. In fact, it's one of those episodes that starts with, like, Percy pulls the mail, Thomas pulls Annie and Clarabelle, Gordon pulls the Express, and then it just keeps going on and on. Maybe they just had to put those in, stretch out the time, but I never understood why on earth was Percy taken to the sheds afterwards? Like, just so the engines could gawk at him? Like, why? So I like this episode. You probably heard me say before, Percy's Chocolate Crunch, the VHS, was my least favorite of, at least the classic series. But this episode, Gordon Takes a Tumble, and then another one I'll get to in a minute, those I really liked. It was just the other ones that were just... It was like 3 good episodes, and then 3 absolutely atrocious ones. I'll put it that way, but... One interesting thing I've noticed about the VHS or DVD, in the episode, Percy's whole face is covered with chocolate. It's all brown, whereas in the VHS, only half of it is. Honestly, and this might be a very dark theory, I wonder if this was because they were worried about people seeing Percy with, like, brown stuff on his face, and they were worried about people seeing that out of context and thinking it was either, like, well, first off, maybe just some poop stuff, or maybe they would have thought, like, why does that train have, I'm not going to say the whole word, but, something that is very offensive that people do to, like, make fun of certain ethnicities. That's, honestly, now that I mentioned that, I think that's probably the reason. I hope this video doesn't get demonetized because of that, but yeah, that's an interesting theory I have. Overall, I feel like this is an episode that sums up Season 6 pretty well. They didn't put as much care into the stories, but, they still had some wacky moments. This is another one of those gimmick episodes, like James and the Red Balloon. Definitely see why they chose this to create a VHS on. And this next episode, Buffer Bother. Yeah, this one, I'm putting this one in F2. I hate this one. I've already gone on about it quite a lot in other videos, but what happened to Bill and Ben, man? This episode is like, it's basically Off the Rails or A Better View for Gordon, but without the humor. And yeah, there are some funny moments, like a pipe falling into his funnel and, blowing soot on Mavis. But it's just not an interesting idea. Like, well, again, it could be interesting if you added some humor to it, but it's just watching a character have a temper tantrum. Again, I don't really know what else to say that I haven't already said, but the sets are just so bland. Why are the buffers never seen again? Like, literally, what else can I add? I really like Bill and Ben's Season 6 theme. That's, like, one slight positive, but, this is definitely my second least favorite episode of the classic series. And again, the derailment at the end, it's kind of like Twin Trouble, the same sort of crash. Honestly, I can't say anything else about this episode. I just said so much. I just hate it. Hate, hate, hate. It's, again, a character throwing a temper tantrum, and just not funny, not interesting, just boring. Cringe. Yeah. Alright, next up we have Toby Had a Little Lamb. And, yeah, I'm gonna put this one in the A. It's another fantastic, brutal Season 6 winter episode, like Jack Frost. I mean, yeah, you just feel it when, Toby says bitter cold. You just feel that bitter cold. Oh man, I mean, this episode just perfectly captures what it's like to be in a blizzard, what it's like to be in just nasty winter weather. I mean, as I said before, having gone to college in Chicago, yeah. And I also really like, it's a great Toby episode because it seems like, kind of like Henry, they didn't really know what to do with Toby later on, so they just kind of had him be either it was just an episode about him being odd, because he's square, or, anxious. But yeah, this episode, he's really brave, yeah, saving the farmer's lambs, braving bad weather, going on his old branch line. Yeah, I feel like this is the episode where they acknowledge that Toby's old branch line is actually part of Sodor. That's kind of how I always saw it, as far as my universe. It was never in England, it was always, Arlesdale or whatever. But anyway, yeah, I think this bridge set is the same from, James in the Ravine from Jack Frost. I mean, if you just pan the camera down, maybe there's the track there, or maybe they just removed the bridge. But yeah, I mean, this, again, sounding like a broken record, the atmosphere in this episode is pitch perfect. I really love how they use the Boulders theme when Duck goes with the snowplow. I was always interested as to what this set right here looked like without the snow. Is it, like, if you just remove this big pile of snow, would it just be nothing? Did they just take a table and throw a bunch of flour on? But yeah, I mean, this is kind of like the winter version of, I guess, it's Percy's Promise meets Toby's Discovery meets Thomas's Christmas Adventure. Thomas and Percy's Christmas Adventure. I guess that's how I can put it. They just did such a great job with the visibility. They got really well. And when I say that, what I mean is, when it's snowing like this, you can hardly see anything. Like the shot of Toby just slowly appearing in the snow with his headlamp. That's just brilliant. I mean, I've been in next to railroad crossings during a heavy snowstorm, and you can hear the train coming, but all you see is like this small light coming forward until it finally passes by. Yeah, so this is definitely an A. I love this episode. Alright, next up we have the episode that states you're not supposed to refer to the green engine as, unclean. Don't call me Jesse Percy! Yeah, on that topic, kind of going on a tangent about that meme, a short while ago, I actually had a dream that, for some reason, I was watching, it was like a director's cut, or, original narration, and for some reason, Gordon had, this high squeaky voice, he won't choose Dirty Percy! And then Percy was, the opposite. He was basically don't call me Dirty Percy! Like Christian Bale's Batman. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of just the joke, too, that, it just doesn't work with the US dub, don't call me Dirty Percy. But I'm gonna put this one in the A tier, too. This is a really funny episode. It's one I didn't like as a kid because I got freaked out by, Alicia Body screaming, but, yeah, I mean, as an adult, I just really appreciate it. It's really funny. Going back on Alec Baldwin's narration, I'm sorry I keep bashing on it. Overall, he's not bad. I just feel like he's very variable. I'll put it that way. And I say that because, well, two things. First off, when he says, "Oh, mouse," is that supposed to be Alicia Body, or is that him narrating? But also just Alicia Body's voice, just I can't possibly trouble little goat is riddled with mice. Look at the little green engine, so sweet and dirty. Yeah, so, don't get me wrong. I just feel like, again, it's just very variable in this season, but, yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to think of anything else I can say about this episode. It's just really funny. I always wonder, like, at the end, after the night of the concert, did they, like, put a mousetrap in the shed the next day? Oh, I guess I'll say, I get why they changed the peasant line for the UK dub, because, yeah, I feel like us Americans, we wouldn't really understand that joke, but still, they could have put something else that was funny, just, like, I clean up nice, but what the heck is that supposed to mean? That, yeah, they could have put something else that was funny, I don't know what, but... Alright, next up we have, I think, my favorite of the season, Thomas and the Jet Engine. Or is it Thomas the Jet Engine? Is it another one of those stupid US title changes? I mean, this is definitely going in the S tier. What else can I say that I haven't already said? Take another shot. But, kind of like Rusty and the Boulder, this is just a great example of how to do unrealistic, crazy stuff, but still be tasteful, I'll put it that way. I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that I have a funny memory of watching this episode for the first time. I got the VHS for my birthday, and then I played it on the TV. My dad was also in the room, and yeah, he was laughing quite a bit. Like all the, oh my god, the jokes in this episode are just so funny. It's like, hi Gordon, bye Gordon, want a race? Never mind. This is an episode that just feels like the crew had such fun making it, and I feel like that's another reason why it works, as opposed to like Up, Up, and Away. Again, they just go full out, they embrace it. Again, like when I was talking about Rusty to the Rescue, this episode gives the audience an excuse to just accept it. I mean, I would be here all day if I list, the inaccuracies of this episode. Like, I'm just curious as to why the hell did they have fuel in the engine? And not just that, but why is there a switch? Like, what is this supposed to be to? Like a commercial airliner? Why on earth? I don't know. Again, I just can't overanalyze this. It also makes me wonder, like, when does this show take place? Or at least this episode? I'd probably say like the 50s, 60s. Yeah, I mean, that looks like the engine you'd see on like a Boeing 707, one of the first major jetliners. I also just wonder how they did this flame effect. Was it digital, or was it like they actually put gas or something in it and lit it? That'd be so funny if they actually like put like a firecracker or a rocket in the engine and they just lit a fuse and it actually powered the model. That would have been so funny. I doubt they did, but yeah, again, what can I say that I haven't already said? This is a hilarious episode. I have no other words. I just love it. It's definitely my favorite of the season. Next up, we've got a pretty controversial one. Edward the Very Useful... Or is it Edward the Really Useful... Oh, it's another one of these stupid US title changes. UK, Edward the Very Useful Engine. US, Edward the Really Useful Engine. I mean, did they think that us Americans didn't know what the word very meant? Come on. Anyway, yeah, this one's pretty controversial. I'm going to put this one in C. You're probably expecting me to put it lower, but honestly, I don't think it's that bad. In fact, I wouldn't even call it bad per se. I'm just pretty neutral on it. I liked this episode as a kid. Obviously, as an adult, I can definitely see the glaring issues with it. But yeah, even though the character, like Gordon and the other engines, the fact that they suddenly got like amnesia and now want Edward scrapped again, I mean, yeah, that's definitely ridiculous. What makes this episode better than some other Edward episodes of like the hit era is that Edward's still in character, classic character. And when I say that, I mean, like Edward Strikes Out, a big example, but there was another episode, I forget what season, I want to say it was season 8 or 9, but Edward thought he was too old, so Thomas did his work. What was the name of that episode? But anyway, what I'm saying is there's no scenes in Edward the Useful Engine where he's like moping and like sad that he's too old. He's not reluctant at all. He even though it's not as clear as say Old Iron, like it's not like he laughs in the face of James like that episode. He's still very much, he doesn't care what the others think. Yeah. In fact, I really like how they used Percy as the one who told the Fat Controller and all that. That I really like. It shows Percy's very caring about his friend, and yeah, so I feel like this episode would be a lot better if they kind of just toned down Gordon's insults. I mean, yeah, so I think this episode's again. I don't even want to say bad. I don't want to say harmless either, because obviously it. This is why I'm putting it in C. I'm very neutral on it. Yeah, the fact that Edward's able to help push this, as the narrator said, very strange train all the way to the station. Yeah, I mean that's quite inspirational. Obviously not on the level as like Old Iron where he's chasing James, but yeah, it has like the same structure as same narrative, same story type as Old Iron. I'll put it that way. Yeah. One thing in the positives, I absolutely love Edward's season 6 theme. Did his theme appear at all after season? Oh yeah, I guess it did in season 3 a bit. But yeah. I mean, obviously Edward was a pretty underused character from like season 5 onwards. But yeah, this episode, that's my opinion on it. Alright, now we come to the last 3 episodes of Season 6, all focused on the narrow gauge engines, kind of like Season 5. And, start off with Duncan Duncan. Yeah, that's a clever title. I love this episode, so, I want to put it in S. A or S? You know what? I'm going to put this one in S. If I put the world's strongest engine at S, I can definitely put this one here. And I say that because this was the last episode on that James and the Red Balloon DVD. But my library, the copy they had some like scratching issues, so it would always get stuck before we got to this episode. Yeah, that would always make me mad because I love this episode. Yeah, this episode I like for pretty much the same reasons as the world's strongest engine. It's just such a hilarious, brutal crash. I mean, yeah, it's a good Duncan episode. Just Duncan getting karma. I guess you could argue maybe this is. In fact, I've noticed some trains routes do this, where this is a different incline from the other ones you've seen. That's why it's not as tall. So yeah, I guess you could argue that, and also this big big cliff being here. Yeah, I always, kind of like with Henry's Forest, I always wondered these vignette shots here, like, were these another episode? I always wondered, I wanted to see those. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to this episode. Again, it's just another Duncan makes a fool out of himself episode. I hate bringing up Baldwin again. I do prefer his season 5 voice. Oh, Scarlowy will take my place in the sheds. Where here it's kind of just like, I'll just push a bunch of trucks up the slate incline. But I think it's alright. I'm not complaining too much. Yeah, I guess that's really all I can say. The crash, again, it's just another excuse to have like a insane crash. Makes you wonder, like, well, first off, how high is this? If Duncan could survive this, like, he's stuck in mud, basically. What is this, like, quicksand? It makes you think, like, could that engine who fell off the bridge and Duncan get spooked have survived? But, yeah, and also the no fishing sign, that's pretty funny. Yeah, that's really all I can say about this one. I like it. Alright, this next one, unfortunately, on the other hand, Rusty saves the day. Yeah, you've heard my thoughts on this one. Should have been called Rusty saves the plot, but fails at it. I'm gonna put this one in E. I don't think it quite deserves F. In fact, yeah, it doesn't make me angry like Middle Engine or Buffer Bother, but it's just the most confusing chapter in the whole Sodor universe. Like, it just completely screws with it. I mean, obviously, I've talked about this so much in my Worst Classic Series episodes video, but, like Skarloey and Rheneas's line, what do they mean when they say that? Do they mean the whole Skarloey Railway? Or do they have their own branch line? It's just baffling. It's so, like, huh? What? Not just that, but, it screws around kind of with the continuity within the episode itself. Like, how long was it between, the Fat Controller closing it and then this side, these scenes here? I mean, I assumed it was maybe like days, a week at most. If that was the case, how on earth would, Skarloey and Rheneas were just running on it a scene ago. How on earth did this happen? Like, yeah, you can see why I find this episode so irritating. It just confuses me so much. I mean, a plot inconsistency, a universe inconsistency aside, I just think it's boring. Yeah, there's just not much to it. It's hard to really explain why. It's a typical save the railway story. Maybe because there's just not a lot of action. This episode just needed a rewrite or something. But yeah, as far as positives, I mean, I think visually, especially the scenes of the decrepit railway, even though it makes no sense. Yeah, those scenes are quite. The model work is quite impressive. I mean, especially this shot here for some reason. But yeah, I mean, again, go watch my worst classic series episode video for like a full analysis. I'll put it this way: this episode is lazy. That's the word I can describe it. It just feels like no one did any research. But yeah, there's Rusty saves the day. All right, finally we've got faulty whistles. Last episode of season 6, and last episode narrated by Alec Baldwin. So this episode I didn't really like as a kid. I don't know why. I just found it boring. Nowadays, I think it's all right. I'm gonna put it in C. Yeah, I just don't really have many thoughts on this one. I guess it could have been more funny. I'll just put it that way. Just the concept, using an organ as a train whistle. It's clearly based off of Mike's whistle or inspired by it. Yeah, I guess that's really all I'll say. I have like no thoughts on this episode now. I guess I'll say that the scenery is quite nice, or at least the physical scenery. For some reason, the color level of this episode, especially these first shots, my God, it's horrible. Just look at the red; it just looks so washed out. For some reason, it just stands out in this episode. But yeah, again, I think this episode's fine. Yeah, again, I just don't really have any opinions on this episode. Alright, so I mean, you've heard me say so many times season 6 is my least favorite of the classic series, but understand, I'm saying of the classic series. Yeah, it just really depends on what you're ranking this against. I mean, obviously, if I were to rank this as far as like all, what was it, 24 seasons, this would probably be around average, around the middle. I think the interesting thing is, that makes this, at least in my opinion, so season 6 was the first season I remember seeing for the first time. So, Salty Secret would have been the first new episode I remember seeing. I was a baby, or no, I wasn't even born when season 5 started airing. So, yeah, but, I do vaguely remember seeing, these VHSs of this, 2002, 2003. But even back then, I could tell there was kind of a drop in quality. I think the color was the biggest thing. It just didn't look as nice, and also the narration. But yeah, the when I criticize season 6, though, yeah, there are some truly awful ones, down here. But it was more of just the general tone. I think, the color level had a big thing to do with that. I think the reason it is, not as good as previous ones comes down to the fact that, I mean, this is my theory. It was kind of a production line season. I'll put it that way. After Magic Railroad, it seems like they got more, more writers, and maybe they weren't as qualified. Maybe they didn't have much experience with the lore. But anyway, yeah. So it feels like it was kind of rushed out. In fact, season 7 came out only a year after this. So yeah, that's definitely what I think happened. There just wasn't as much time to really flesh out these stories. Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's some up here in the S tier. I mean, but even then, I feel like the world's strongest engine, Duncan, looking analytically, they're probably more of an A or B, but, I just love them because of the crashes. And so, I mean, compare that to, some other great episodes of seasons like Grandpa. But yeah, season 6 is kind of that, in my opinion, it was that weird limbo between Magic Railroad and the Hit era. And so and correct me if I'm wrong, I think season 6 only was on DVD in the US. But I will say this though, I think, at least in my lifetime, it was the golden age of Thomas. Not necessarily the episode quality, but just like, it's the era where I remember being the most excited, I'll put it that way, between like 2000 and 2004. I mean, the merchandise, a lot of great videos were coming out then, all these best ofs. So I feel like season 6 is where, they didn't have the constraints of Shining Time Station anymore. They didn't have to focus on Magic Railroad anymore. But they weren't quite in that, like, dumbed down hit era. So I'll say that. Yeah, so, like, 2002, 2003, that was a time when I was genuinely excited about Thomas. I'll just put it that way. But yeah, I mean, season 6 still has some fantastic episodes, some among my favorites. I just think the overall tone is what kind of just drags it down. I'll get the season 7 video up hopefully pretty soon, within the next month. But yeah, there's season 6.